Peri-Urban is. I mean, where did this name come from? What's it about?
Well, Peri-Urban is that intersection between the urban front within a metropolitan area and the rural sector, which is land that's used for agriculture. So it's been in and around Perth, hasn't been really paid a lot of attention to in terms of the WAPC, primarily looking at urban deferred and urban zoning. But now, with all the discussions around food and the Food Futures program, we're now starting to look at the importance of that space. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that it's characterised by smaller land holdings, 5 to 25 hectares, that sort of stuff. And a lot of it's lifestyle. So people go out there for horses or to grow crops or to whatever. It's traditionally been sort of like a midland or a mid-area where it's been hard to get support for them. The Department of Agriculture, as it was previously, had what it called a small landholder information service, and they put a lot of effort into providing fact sheets on small landholders managing these properties.
Cool. If I'm hearing you right, and you hear when I talk to farmers out and about, they'll say, you urban people have got all the best farming land. You went and built your city on the best farming land. Is it because we got the rainfall, we're in a more control, we've got lush soils here? Is that what's going to take this urban farming, for lack of a better word, or in layman's terms, is that what makes it successful?
Well, when we look at how these colonies or areas were originally set up, the land that was taken up for farming was largely river flats or silted river flats
alluvial
with
soils.
good alluvial soils where things grew well. So our first market gardens, for instance, were down on the banks of the Swan River at South Perth.
Swan Valley?
And in the Swan Valley, where there were good deep alluvial soils that actually grew things very well.
Retained moisture?
Yes, all of those things. Now, as our cities have grown and the suburban needs for housing have displaced those, the food producers have gone to the next viable areas. So they went to Osborne Park and Spearwood. Spearwood was deep sands and grew things well, but needed a lot of water.
Yep.
Osborne Park was peat swamps, so things grew well there. So now as we go, then it was, as that filled up, they went to Wanneroo, and that was deep sands and wasn't terribly good for growing stuff. But now they're into better yellow sands at Gin and Dandaragan. So they've hopped where the better soils are, but it is fair to say that the good alluvial, good soils have disappeared under tarmac.
Yep.
What will that create as opportunities for people in urban environments who say, we want organic produced vegetables? Does this type of farming support that, or are we back into it's going to be mass produced and tasteless?
It's on the organic front, it does create the environment for that because organic can be fairly intensive. But what has to go with that are the other marketing streams for those organic producers to actually engage with the market. That's not Coles and Woolies, which is quite difficult. So there's been an explosion of farmers markets around the Perth area. And so there's a number of those growers who have been coming from the regions and from the peri-urban space to actually sell what they've got, which includes value-added goods. But I think there's a lot more room for more of those farmers in those spaces, because a number of those farmers, they might go to a market on Saturday and then another market on Sunday, and they get quite stretched out. So,
one of the things technically is that we've seen with conventional farming the nutrition of food decline over the last 40 years. And from that perspective, we're finding that this re-engagement of what we call regenerative farming, which is actually getting back to a complete soil biome, a living soil biome, it's about those nutrition levels returning, and that is the shift that is most likely to fill the void, more than the organic production, because the organic production, whilst it's holistic and it deals with zero chemical inputs, the biological farming actually takes into account all of those, but some from each camp, so that you can still produce volumes of product which have high nutrition but are good quality and meet consumers' volumes and needs.
I think what's exciting about listening to you guys and what RDA is doing and what you guys are doing, and I hear you talk about robotic farming, I hear about climate control, because it's going to be in these protective farming environments. Does this mean that where we usually have seasonal storm fruits, for instance, my kids go nuts over storm fruits when they come into season, that we're going to see a degeneration of actual seasonal vegetables? We're actually going to be growing them year long because we can control it?
In some instances, there are some crops that can be grown for longer parts of the year in a controlled environment. But if you're talking about crops where you need to heat an enclosed structure, that becomes quite expensive. And again, consumers would have to be prepared to pay for that sort of added value, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. Certainly in WA, our climate extremes are quite pronounced, and our really hot summers allow us to grow our summer vegetables and fruits, but it limits them as well. Our winters, to carry some of those fruits and vegetables through winter to get them cropping would be a challenge, but it's not impossible.
What excites RDA about this project?
Well, for us, with Peri-Urban Development and what Perth NRM is doing, is that we're starting to have the conversation about what the alternatives are, what can be done. And at the end of the day, it's about new business development and job growth. So there's a high youth unemployment in the peri-urban space, especially if you look south of Perth, where youth unemployment is currently sitting around 30%. And we have a number of high schools that are reaching capacity in terms of students. We need to figure out what jobs we're going to have for those students and what we need to do to get businesses interested in participating and investing in Western Australia. And the way that we're going to do that is through some of this technology that is currently happening. So the more that we can look at vertical farming, aquaculture, the more opportunities that will exist to overseas markets, which will then drive those job opportunities for young people and white-collar jobs in the whole bit. So that's what we're really interested in.
Yeah, and I think to support that, I've had a little bit of involvement with secondary education, where we've tried to engage students through a program called PIXI, runs through the universities, but it's looking at getting students in latter secondary years interested in agricultural pursuits. And a few years ago we had programs where they did experiments where Dr. Lynn Beasley, as the chief scientist, was the judge of the projects, and there were prizes awarded. So those are the sorts of initiatives where we can actually engage students in secondary education to look at the opportunities that exist in agriculture, and with the digital age, the excitement of those sort of adaptations, which the young people today are quite focused on, may well be the pull-through that we need, apart from the nutritious food production and meeting our community's needs for those inputs.
And I think with the increase in food programs, so MasterChef, My Kitchen Rules, and everybody competing about what kind of dish they're going to make, being able to actually say, yes, you can do that, but you have to have an understanding of where the food comes from. Somebody once told me a little bit of a joke about somebody going through with an apple and asking the checkout chick, is this apple going to get any bigger? You know, so we need to reacquaint ourselves with food, the production systems, but we can use this whole interest in creating food and menus and the whole bit to actually drive that interest back to the habit.